Hey there, everybody. It's Mark Crilley. I am here with Message to My Subscribers video number 14. It's been quite a long time since I did one of these, so apologies for that. And thank you, everyone who posted questions on one of my previous videos. Those are the questions, some of them anyway, that I'll be trying to answer today. In the meantime, I'm going to start working on a drawing. I'm trying to practice drawing a certain type of pose, that of a girl whose back is kind of turned to us, but then she's looking over her shoulder, her head turning back to look at us. Kind of a tricky pose, and I need practice on it, so that's what I'm going to be working on. But let's go ahead and get to the first question. It is from C.T. Kuro, I think. And the question is, for most publishing companies, you can't just send stuff in, so how do you get publishing companies to look at your work or meet up with them like an editor or an agent? That's a very good question. And I made a video some time ago. It was a Message to My Subscribers video number 5 that really goes in depth into my path towards getting published. And what I want to do, because I think that has sort of lost audio, I want to re-upload. Maybe I'll do that in the days ahead, or as soon as possible, for those of you who are curious about that question. So that you can get all that information. But in the meantime, to not just completely ignore the question, I'm going to answer one thing. I think that your assumption that you can't send stuff in is not necessarily true for all publishing companies. I think that is certainly true of bigger, say, comic book publishing companies. If you want to mail in something to Marvel or DC, yeah, I mean, come on, they're just getting thousands of these things, and for all I know, they may be just tossing them in the trash rather than looking at them. But smaller companies will, I believe, still open up the things that come in the mail. So if I were you, I would keep an eye out for those smaller comic book publishing companies and give it a try, But what you've got at your disposal today is the internet, and I would certainly advise you to try to build an audience by way of the internet. DeviantArt, I mean, if you were to start working on a story and upload, a page every single week or every 2 days, every 3 days, and you really stick to that, I think you could start to build an audience that way. It's certainly worth a try. I believe that there's nothing to do with manga, but the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series, I think, got its start online. He built up this huge audience by way of the internet, and then he was off and running to, really have one of the biggest careers in children's books today. Speaking of children's books, I got this next question. Will you ever make a children's book? And I'm going to just sort of set the pencil down for a second to say, in a way, I already have made a whole series of children's books. It's called Akiko on the Planet Smoo. This first one came out in the year 2000. And just to give you a sample of what the illustration style is like, not really a manga style, sort of more of a classic American cartooning style there. So yes, if you are intrigued by my life as a children's book illustrator, go ahead and check that out. Here's another one where I didn't write the book, but I was hired to illustrate it, and some of you, it's called The Enormous Egg. And some of you may remember a video in which I showed the making of this illustration for this book. So I have a certain history of working in the children's book industry, but the question, and I didn't really attribute that, it's to Velvetina. The question, will you ever make a children's book? Maybe what the question is referring to is a picture book. The sort of Dr. Seuss or Where the Wild Things Are, these bedtime type books that are mainly illustrated with just a few words. No, I have never done one of those, and I would love to have the chance. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Maybe I will get that opportunity. Let's move on to the next question. Do you have any assistants that help you on your work, doing things like inking, etc.? No, I don't, and I've never had an assistant of any kind. I've always done all of the work myself. It's not so much like, I'm a perfectionist, but more, I just could never begin to afford to pay an assistant. And before any of you say, well, I'll be your assistant for free. It's just so much easier for me to do it all on my own than I don't have to be bossing someone around and say, here, no, you did this wrong. Here, do this, do that, do this. I just don't like telling people what to do. I like everyone to be free to do whatever they want to. That's why you hear me with these videos saying, this is not the way to draw manga. This is just my way, or a way. Find your own way, that kind of thing. Anyway, thanks for asking that question. And did I even ask? No, that was, do you have any assistance? That question came from Unique Enigma. Thanks so much for that question. Let's go ahead and move on to question. Is this question number 4? I'm not really numbering them. But anyway, it is the Mark Crilly on DeviantArt you? Yes. Yes, the Mark Crilly on DeviantArt is indeed me. So if you just take my name, Mark Crilly, one word, and how does it work at DeviantArt? It's like markcrilly.deviantart.com. I believe that's it. Then you can, it's pretty easy to find me there on DeviantArt. And sometimes, though certainly not every time, I can get, when I do one of these videos, one of these YouTube videos, I will follow it up with a DeviantArt version of the tutorial. Not so much recent. I used to put a lot of things on there that were just illustrations I was working on and so forth. Haven't done so much of that lately. I really ought to get back to it. My apologies to those of you who are following me on DeviantArt that I have not been, I have not been a very good Deviant guy lately, but as we gear up towards my next projects, which, the very next thing that's going to come out is this How to Draw Manga book. People have been asking about that, and thank you for being interested. It should be out in the early winter, certainly by like January or February. I guess that's more like midwinter of this coming year, 2012. Very excited about that, but the publishers don't want me to start hyping it too much and talking about it too much right now, so I'm going to be holding off on giving the details on that one until somewhat later. Now, that question about DeviantArt comes from Concept, K-H-A-N-H, Concept, and a second question from Concept is, do you paint? If you do, can we see some of your paintings? Well, it's been many years since I painted, by which I mean oil paint. But yes, when I was in college, I did study oil painting. And in fact, let me go ahead and sort of click the pause button on the camera. And I will, after I've finished shooting this video, go down to my living room and film a little bit of the oil paintings, one or two of that I have hanging on the wall, and splice that in right here. So let's go ahead and hit that button, and you guys can have a peek at my oil paintings that really kind of date from my college years. Okay, so there you see a little blast from my own past there of oil paintings. I really wish I could get back into oil paintings, but it's obviously a time-consuming thing, and I'm pretty busy with my deadlines. But I have this sort of image of me years from now in retirement, getting back into oil painting. It really is a joy and certainly a challenge that I would like to improve my oil painting skills. In any case, let's get on to a really good question we have here. I have a question. This is from L307UG4. I have a question regarding speech bubbles. Do you draw the page fully and then stick the speech bubbles over it? Or do you draw everything, including the speech bubbles, at the same time? Great question. Different artists have different ways of dealing with speech bubbles. Certainly, there are many cartoonists who do it old school, which is to say the all of the speech bubbles are part of the art, and the lettering is hand lettered, and there is no use of computer at all. I did that on my very first few comics. I did everything by hand that way, but pretty quickly I moved to doing the lettering with a font and using the computer basically to create at least partially the word balloons, if not the entire, or speech bubbles, I guess, as the questioner phrased it. I used the computer for at least part of that, if not the entire thing. I think with Brody's Ghost, in fact, let me go ahead and I'll pull out Brody's Ghost, maybe some of the original art, and contrast it with the comic to show you what parts are done by hand and what parts are done by computer. So here is some of the original art from Brody's Ghost, Book 1. And you see Brody's putting down his guitar in this scene, but you don't see any word balloons of any kind. And here is the actual page as it turned out in the book. As you can see, I work a little larger than actual print size, but not that much larger. And there he is saying his lines of dialogue. All right, well, bring it on then. You're messing with the master. Me doing my best Brody voice there. But you can see the word balloons, the text, it's all dropped in by computer in Photoshop later on. And even these gray tones, look at the jacket, it's all just, I mean, I call this like kind of coloring book art, where it's just, it looks unfinished to me, it's just lines. And then, so I go in with Photoshop and I add gray tones and shading just to finish it off. But I am, old school in the sense that I'm not drawing on a tablet or something. I'm doing actual ink on paper. So I hope that answered that question. Let me go ahead and hit the pause button, and we'll get to at least one more question. Okay, so here's a question I really love, and will enjoy answering. It is from XBladeWingX. What advice would you give to people like me who wish to become teachers in Japan, but at the same time pursue a career in something artsy? First of all, I'm delighted to hear that you're interested in teaching in Japan. I did that, of course, in both Japan and Taiwan. For me, it was the late 80s, early 90s, long ago. But it is just a wonderful experience to live overseas. It's not necessarily so much about teaching English, although if you're interested in teaching English, you're going to love that aspect of it. But in a lot of ways, teaching English is just a way of kind of getting a ticket over there and having the experience of living overseas. Now, I know that in Japan they have a program called the JET program. First and foremost, any program, at pretty much any position teaching overseas requires a college diploma of some kind. So make sure, if you want to do that, do whatever it takes to get to college and finish college. Get that diploma in your hand, and then you are in a position where you can maybe apply to the JET program or any number of other programs. When I was in Taiwan, I taught at the YMCA, believe it or not. Of course, we think of it mainly as a place to go get exercise here in America, but in Taiwan, they had quite a developed English language, English teaching program, and I, among many others, taught English and really enjoyed myself over there with the YMCA in Taiwan. So I can't give you super specific advice on where you go to pursue those jobs. But I think if you're in college, if you get to college and start asking around about that, about how do I get a job teaching English in Japan or China or somewhere overseas, I'm sure they have the resources to help you with that. Well, I am almost done with this video, but I feel bad that you haven't seen the completed drawing. So what I'm going to do is do my usual time-lapse thing, throw in some music so you can see me finish this drawing that I started today. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed making it, and do keep an eye out for my re-upload of subscriber video number 5. That has lots of information about how I first got published. Not only that, but my sort of general progress as an artist from my high school years up into my 20s and 30s. But let's go ahead and wind this down with one final question coming from Kaizoku AMV, who asks, are you really going to be back with another video real soon? And I'm so glad you asked me that, Kaizoku, because yes, I will be back with another one real soon.